Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Lori Hoover, intuitive guide and psychic medium. Together, let's wake the fuck up. Today's guest knows what it is like to deny yourself because you simply don't know how to trust and love. She knows how hard it is to have so many blockages and doubts that you truly don't even know who you are. My guest is passionate about shedding limiting beliefs and working through past trauma to rediscover the true self. She enjoys working with those who need support and understanding while working to uncover their own truth. She hosts a podcast called Chasing Spirituality and also has an intentional product line under the same name. She has a passion for astrology, manifestation, witchcraft, and the law of one. Please welcome Maggie Luna to the show. Hi, Maggie.
Hi, Lori. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I'm really happy that you're here. Before we jump into like a Q&A type of format, would you mind sharing a bit about your journey? Because it seems like you kind of went through hell to get here. How did you end up doing the work that you currently do?
Well, let's just say I didn't expect I would be here a few years ago. I guess as a child, I was very connected to spirit. I would communicate with spirit. I was tapped into my gifts, but that was also because I didn't have anyone else. I was very alone. So spirit was my mentor. Spirit was my parent, my caregiver, and provided for me. And as I got older, I had some experiences that were scary for me. I didn't have boundaries with spirit. I didn't know how to shut things off. And I became really afraid of my gifts, in particular, the gift of clairsentience, which is clair feeling, when you can feel other people's emotions and other people's pain. And I grew up around a lot of toxic people. My parents were alcoholics, they were addicts. My mother in particular had a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse that she experienced. And I had to feel all of that all the time. And while spirit was very comforting for me, there were other things that were just too much for a child. So as I got older, I slowly began to turn that off. This led me to similar lifestyle that my mother led, which was people pleasing. I said whatever I needed to say and acted however I needed to act in order to fit in order to feel loved, in order to feel accepted, because I never felt accepted growing up. I felt like the black sheep. I'm sure many of your listeners can resonate with this because I feel like spirit is often closer to us for these reasons, so that we can learn to love ourselves and we can learn to accept who we really are. And sometimes that does take us on a journey by ourselves and a journey of being alone. So this lasted basically my entire life. It wasn't until I was in my 30s when I started to realize that I didn't know who I was. I had adopted all of these beliefs and all of these opinions from everyone else I had been exposed to, from my family, from my peers, from my friends. And I didn't know what I believed anymore. I didn't know how I should feel. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know what interested me. And a couple years ago, when quarantine first started, that's when it hit me the strongest, because I actually had time to be alone and time to sit with my own thoughts. And I realized that I was a fraud, that I was fake, and I was living a life of lies. And at that point, I decided to get to know myself again. I started trying things that I remembered liking when I was a child. So I started connecting with my inner child again, watching old movies that I used to love, doing things that used to bring me joy. I started really focusing on my own habits, my own patterns, and my own beliefs that would come up. And then I would question those. So for an example, I had a lot of insecurities, a lot of self-doubt. So when these types of thoughts would come up, I would ask myself, well, why? Why do I feel that way? Why do I feel that I am not worthy of this or that I'm not good enough for this? And it just led me, really, it just led me closer to my true self. And it made me strip away all of these fake beliefs that I had accumulated throughout my life. And after that, I decided to create the podcast because speaking publicly and speaking about my insecurities is something that was a big struggle. I was afraid to put myself out there because I was afraid of rejection and I was afraid of being criticized. And I knew that that was one thing that I had to do to get over that. But also, I love helping people. I want to help others who may have had similar lifestyles, similar upbringings. I want to help them realize how easy it is to, I mean, not easy, but how you can easily let go of who you don't want to be. All you have to do is make the conscious choice and then put forth the effort to bring awareness around who you want to be. And that's how I got to where I am today.
That is quite the journey, honestly. It's unfortunate that it often takes such trauma to get us to that place of awakening and connecting. And I don't know, you're never too young to do it, though. I didn't wake up until I was 40. So there is no wrong time or bad time to reconnect like that. So one of my favorite tools with regard to self-love, because that is such a huge issue for so many of us. We were brought up just, whether it was that we were told we weren't enough or the actions of those around us made us feel that we weren't enough or whatever it is. It's just a difficult thing for so many of us to have any kind of self-love, because putting yourself first was always, no, you don't do that. That's just selfish. So one of my favorite tools is mirror work, where you literally stand in front of the mirror for 5 minutes a day and you just say loving, kind things to yourself. What are your favorite tips and tools for healing a lack of self-love?
That's a great question. And I completely agree with you. I feel like this is something that so many of us struggle with. And you don't have to come from an abusive family or a neglectful family. This is also put on us from society. Society tells us to be completely selfless and not to be arrogant. And I always noticed how in groups, especially, when you're talking to friends or coworkers, everyone wants to share how bad their life is. They all want to share, well, this happened to me today. And oh no, well, my tire blew out on the interstate. Well, my dog got sick last night. But no one wants to share the things that are great. No one wants to lift each other up and say, well, I got a promotion last week and I did this. And I feel like that is sometimes from our upbringing, but it is also just from what we've been conditioned to do and how we've been conditioned to think and feel. And I also do mirror work. I think mirror work is an excellent tool. It can be very uncomfortable in the beginning for some people who have a really hard time. I know it was very awkward for me at first, but mirror work is excellent. And definitely saying those affirmations, whether you're staring in the mirror or not. What I like to do is I'll say certain things that I know that I'm struggling with. So if I'm feeling like I'm maybe not being the best parent this week, then I'll say, things that have to do with my parenting, like I am only human and it is okay for me to make mistakes, because a lot of times we beat ourselves up when we make mistakes or when we don't feel like we are our best selves. But that's not reality. You can't always be 100% because we're human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall short sometimes. And I feel like the best self-love that you can ever give yourself is to just give yourself grace. And when you make mistakes or when you do fall short or you're not giving 100%, just say that that's okay. And that for where you are right now, that what you gave is perfect.
I think for a lot of people, that is almost asking too much. It's difficult to get to that place. And I know for myself, when I first started doing the mirror work, I literally couldn't even look myself in the eye for, I don't even remember how long it was now, but when I finally did connect, I lost it. I started bawling my eyes out, and it was traumatic, honestly. I avoid mirrors. Typically, I would avoid them other than to put my mascara on or whatever. So it's a big ask depending on where you are. But I think that is like the perfect place to start, to just acknowledge that it is okay. I do believe that we all do the best that we can from where we are, working with whatever it is that we're working with. And sometimes those choices may not be the best for the long term or whatever, but in the moment, I think that we do act in the best way that we possibly can in the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that.
One of the things that you had to do was to go through, and we've all done this, at least the people that I know that are on this path, we have had to go through and like actually start to uncover our limiting beliefs. So what do you find is the best way to do that? How do you get to those in order to even recognize what they are so that you can start to change them?
Right. Yeah. And for me, limiting beliefs is one thing that does prevent us from truly loving ourselves. This was a big step for me in the process of learning to accept and love myself more, was uncovering those. And for me, the way that I started was really just to question your triggers. And it's hard in the moment, and sometimes you're not going to really catch it until later. But if you can question yourself when you're triggered, it may be immediately, it may be seconds later, moments later, or it may not even be until the next day. But start questioning why. So, an example, when say I get really aggravated when someone doesn't return my phone call. Okay, so we'll use my husband as an example. My husband is very forgetful. He is a Gemini. He's scatterbrained, and he forgets to return my phone call a lot. So when he doesn't return my phone call, it gets under my skin. It just really fires me up. I'll get irritated and aggravated. Well, if I am really trying to bring some awareness to that and really get to the root and get to the limiting belief, I have to start questioning, why am I truly irritated? So I'll start kind of going backwards. Okay, so why am I triggered? I'm triggered because he didn't call me back. Okay, but why? Why does that make me so bothered? What about it? Well, it could be that I find it inconsiderate. Let's go back a little bit deeper. How does it make me actually feel? Well, I said that I was irritated, but there's got to be something deeper than that. And if we keep going backwards, I would get to the fact that it makes me feel like he doesn't care. It makes me feel like he's not validating my feelings, that he is being inconsiderate of my feelings. Maybe I'm even afraid that he doesn't really truly care, or that he doesn't love me as much as I love him. Maybe I'm afraid that he could leave me because his love isn't true. Now, when you go back that far, you can start to say, well, that just sounds so silly. I don't think that my husband really doesn't love me because he forgot to call me back. It's just what he does. He didn't do it intentionally. And then I can bring awareness to him and forgive him. So I'll stop being so, catty towards him for making a simple mistake. And I'll realize that he's human. So I'm bringing love to him, but I'm also bringing love to myself and realizing that I was just scared. I wasn't truly angry at him. I wasn't trying to lash out. I was afraid because part of me felt some kind of trigger from something that happened to me when I was younger. or when I was growing up, something triggered that response for me. And now I get to reparent myself and I get to love myself and tell myself that it's okay to be scared, but I can bring rational thought into it as well and realize that even though I am afraid, I don't have any logical reason to be afraid and I can just hold space for myself.
So this was not in my list of questions, but what you just said brought something up for me about the reparenting piece. And this is something that a lot of people, I think, struggle with this to even comprehend, like, okay, why would you do that? And for me, because time is not actually linear, it's only that way for us here so that we can have this day-to-day experience. But in actuality, everything happens all at once. And so that you were at whatever age, 6 years old or whatever it happens to be, still exists in there, right? I mean, it's all, I know nobody can see me, I'm doing these hand gestures and stuff, but time is not actually linear. And so everything that we've ever done in this life or any other, it's all going on at the same time, at the same moment. And that is such a difficult concept for most people to grasp, that it doesn't make sense to them about the reparenting thing or even connecting with your inner child. And it is such a powerful thing to do, though, so healing. So can you just talk a little bit about that? What is your process if you're going to have a conversation and reparent?
Right. Yeah. Even if it's too difficult for someone to, I guess, see the reason why it would be good to connect with your inner child because it's too hard of a concept to grasp that time is not linear. And I get that. It was hard for me to understand for a while as well. I try to explain it to my son, and he's just looking at me like, you are absolutely crazy, mom. Like, time exists. And I'm like, it's like simultaneously, though. It's like multiple present moments. And he's just, no, mom, you're crazy. But so one way that was explained to me in the beginning that made it a little bit easier for me to grasp and understand the importance of working with the inner child is the energetic aspect of the inner child. If everything is energy, then the part of us that is the inner child, the part of us that was a child once, the part of our subconscious, even the part of our psyche. And this is in psychology. Dr. Freud, Carl Jung, like they talk about the inner child as an actual piece of our psyche. It is also an energy. So when we connect to our inner child, we are connecting to it energetically, just like you would connect to a spirit, just like you would connect to a past loved one or an ancestor or to your angels. It exists the same way that they exist. So if you can believe in angels and you can believe in spirits, then you can also believe that your inner child truly does exist and it exists inside of you. You can speak to him or her, you can have a conversation. And the best advice I can give about connecting with that inner child, especially if you've experienced a lot of trauma or you believe that you have some deep inner child wounding, would be to first develop that relationship again. Because if your inner child is anything like mine, my inner child was afraid of adults, didn't trust adults, didn't want anything to do with me, didn't want to talk to me at first. So when I first began trying to connect to my inner child, I would first do things that are fun, like watch old Disney movies that I used to love, or go play outside, run around with, the kids, lay in the grass and watch the clouds. Do things that are childlike, especially things that you enjoy doing that will kind of make the child calm down, be a little bit more carefree. And then you can also start incorporating that reparenting aspect where you begin asking yourself, what do I wish my parents would have done for me in this situation? Or what would I do if this was my child and my child was afraid or my child needed advice? What do you think a loving, caring person would do for anyone that they love, but especially a child.
Yeah, really great points. And I think it's an excellent way to look at it too, because it's just like a thought form. As soon as you have the thought, it's a thing, so even those are out there. And if it's something that, let's just say you have an idea for, I don't know, to create something, but you don't act on it, it's still out there. So somebody else can now basically bump into and pick it up. And, if you've ever seen on TV or something, there's something being advertised and you say, shit, I thought of that 10 years ago or whatever. Well, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
I want to jump over and talk about manifestation. So that is such a huge, huge thing for everybody. Like, what do you do for manifestation? Like, what's your go-to guide, if you will?
Okay. Yeah. So, like you said, everyone approaches manifestation differently. For me, I like to think of manifestation as more of a creation of reality. I don't really think that we're attracting things per se or that we're drawing things to us. I feel that we are projecting and creating the reality that we desire. But this is also impacted by our beliefs and by our subconscious and by our habits and what we think, which is why it's so important to do this work and to do the healing work and to be more mindful, because if you're not sure what's really programmed in there, you're not going to always get the best outcome. You're not always going to get the reality that you want. So for me, my guide would be imagination. Imagination and visualization is one of the most powerful gifts and tools that we have been provided. It's not just a simple, gift that was given for children to keep themselves entertained, but as we get older, we lose touch of that. We don't use it as often, and definitely in society, we're often made fun of for using it and to being more in that dreamlike state. But you can always get that back, and you just practice. There's tons of visualization techniques out there, and once you kind of get the hang of that, I feel like you can take those techniques and visualize the outcomes that you want to see. My method is visualizing things that I want to happen that aren't too far away from my reality, because my logical brain will always kick in and will always shut me down if I try to go too big. Some people will tell you different, and they'll say to dream as big as you want. And I'm not going to tell you not to do that. I think that's great. But for me, most of the time, I try to keep it somewhat close to what I can actually picture to happen, or I feel like my logical brain will shut me down. So I picture things in the present moment. I always use the present tense when I do any kind of visualization technique. And I'll try to make it very relatable, like I'm having a conversation with someone that I'm really close to about what it is that I wanted. So like if I'm wanting a new car, I'll picture, me driving the car, my husband sitting next to me, the kids in the back seat, just something that's really simple and easy for me to believe. Once I get to the point where I feel like I have visualized this enough, sometimes it's just one visualization, sometimes it's before bed that I do it, or it's in a meditation. Sometimes I let it build, and I'll create this for days or for weeks or for months. But once I'm ready, this is the hard part, I let it go. You have to let it go and surrender to the universe that it will come to you when it is the right time. And that's the hardest part for me and for most people, because we want to control it. We want what we want, and we want it now. But if you can just get to that surrender to the flow, that's when you'll see the biggest results with your manifestation.
Yeah, it's funny. I do a card a day, and I'm pretty sure that was yesterday's card, literally just to chill. And I said, like it or not, divine timing is an actual thing, and you just have to chill out and let your manifestation show up in its own time. It is
Mhm.
very tricky because we just get attached to things, and that attachment is really what hinders it from coming in. I really love that. And you're right, because we really do get away from that whole seeing things and make believe and all of that stuff. And that's why vision boards are helpful for some people. It just depends on if you're a word person or if you're more a visual person or whatever. Use whatever tools work for you to put that out there and create that in your mind. So really good.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break and just pay some bills, and we'll be back in a moment. Perhaps you've thought about starting your own podcast. I can tell you firsthand that starting a podcast was one of the best decisions I have ever made. But it can feel overwhelming if you don't know how to get started. Well, that's where Buzzsprout comes in. Buzzsprout is hands down the easiest and best way to launch a professional podcast. In fact, it's so good, they've already helped over 100,000 people launch their own podcasts. Buzzsprout will get your podcast into every major podcasting platform like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. You also get a great-looking podcast website, audio players you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, tools to promote your episodes, and on and on. Plus, Buzzsprout publishes new blog posts, podcast episodes, and YouTube videos every week, so you can learn the ins and outs of podcasting from the people who eat, drink, and breathe it. To start your own podcast and get a $20 Amazon gift card, follow the link in the show notes. This lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you and helps support our show. Buzzsprout, the easiest way to start a podcast. Welcome back, everybody. So, Maggie, you mentioned that astrology aided you in your healing. How so?
Well, when I first began to really open myself up to my spirituality and stop being afraid of that side of myself, stop being afraid of the judgment and, people criticizing the woo woo, I decided to, I just became drawn to astrology. And I got my birth chart off of a website called Cafe Astrology. And I took a journal at the time and began writing down all of my placements. And the reason why this was so helpful and healing for me is because for the first time, maybe in forever, I felt like I knew who I was. And it felt like everything I had experienced, everything I had gone through, all of my trauma, all of the things that I wasn't sure about, all the things about myself that I had disowned or that I, had pushed aside were shown to me in a way that I could accept. And it just felt so aligned. It felt like it was part of my path. It was part of my journey and who I was. And it was in that moment that I truly accepted who I was, and I accepted that I am exactly where I'm meant to be. And everything that has happened to me thus far has happened for a reason and has led me to where I am.
That is such a powerful place to be in too, because when you really truly can step into that knowing and own that, it's just so empowering, because then you can lead from that place of, okay, I do belong here and there is something that I'm here to do. So there are so many different things that you have like in your bio, if you will, that are really
Mhm.
appealing for me to talk about. So I'm sorry that I'm kind of jumping around, but I want to go to energetic family patterns or ancestral trauma. So can you explain what is an energetic family pattern or ancestral trauma, and how would my listeners know if they actually had one?
Yeah, sure. So just like our own trauma and our own wounds that we've experienced in childhood have, I guess, programmed deep within our subconscious, and they create our habits, they create our patterns. We also pull the same wounds, the same energetic patterns from our parents and from their parents and from our entire bloodline and our ancestors. And a lot of these wounds, you can see them fall into families, and they'll create almost like a loop. So an example for my family is alcoholism. I have heavy roots of alcoholism on both my maternal and my paternal side. And I can trace that back from my mother to one of their parents, and to one of their parents, and so on and so forth. And you can also trace tons of different things. So an example would be races that have experienced a lot of suppression and a lot of trauma as a race. You can see that that's carried down through their genetics. We can see, we've done testing in rats because rats have similar DNA makeup to us, and they produce so often that we can see their generations a lot quicker. I forget exactly how fast it is, but for us, we have to wait 20 years, where for them we can see it within, I think, just 2 or 3 years. And unfortunately, they had to do some things to the rats to produce trauma, but they also had some tests where they did positive things, and they could see that in their offspring. They could see that even though 3 generations later of rats were never traumatized, they would still react the same ways that the original rats would. And we can trace that in our families for all kinds of different things that we have experienced within our bloodline. Also, another thing that we can trace or we can tap into energetically is, I'm trying to think of the best way to, more of like a karmic loop. So if there is some kind of karmic pattern, so for example, my mother had extremely bad driving anxiety. She doesn't know why. She has not experienced any kind of accident that she's aware of. Her mother was also extremely terrified of driving. Again, nothing there that she can pinpoint that caused that. Me, I have driving anxiety. My daughter, she's 14. She's going to be driving soon. I can tell she has driving anxiety, but none of us have any experience where we can say that's where it came from. There can be a deeper loop than that, like abuse or some kind of trauma that will create and fall down, almost similar to like addiction and things like that. But sometimes we can't really pinpoint who started it. And to me, I feel like some of those that we can't really pinpoint where it came from, it's more karmic.
Okay. Now, I've done some work with some of my own clients in the past where I have gone in and I'll call on whoever the hell I can. So I work a lot with Archangel Michael and Gabrielle, and I will call them in. And I have actually done clearings and cord cuttings for this very stuff, the energetic, the ancestral traumas and patterns, even the karmic stuff, as well as past life. So I have asked to cut all the cords and clear all of this, assuming that it's been fulfilled, whatever it was that we were meant to get from that, if it's doable to clear it. And I just say to clear it across all time, space, dimension, and reality in every bit of it, whether it is a past life or a family thing or something like that. Have you ever done any of that yourself? Any of the clearing part?
I have done it on myself. I haven't done it on anyone else. I do a lot of work within my own family because I feel like I have so much that goes just beyond me and my parents. I feel like I have so much that goes a lot deeper than that. And I feel like I've cleared a lot of it, but I do feel like some of it is just it's not ready to be completely released yet. And I'm okay with that. I just keep trying to get through to the root of it, and eventually I start to see phases of it almost fall away.
Wow. And that's awesome too, because what an amazing thing to be able to, in this lifetime, end a cycle like that. You know, that's huge, especially for your offspring. It's amazing.
Mhm. Raphael is one that I've called on personally for my family things.
Hmm.
He definitely steps in a lot with a very, very healing presence for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you ask me, intentions are everything. And I even believe that they can bypass the formality and dogma that's often associated with so many of today's like spiritual practices, that you have to draw these symbols in the air, or you have to do this sigil or that thing, or you have to knock on your oracle cards or whatever. I think that your intentions really do trump all of that. What do you believe about that? Or why do you believe that they're so important, your intentions?
I'm right there with you. I believe that our intention is the magic. Other than us and our belief in ourselves and our belief in the magic and our belief in our connection to source, it's our intention. Our intention is what drives it, it's what powers everything. And for me, I think whether you identify as a witch and you use crystals, or you knock on your oracle cards, or whatever it is, I feel like those are just almost like tools and props that help us remember that, or they help us get in whatever state of mind we need to get into so that we can become fully empowered and fully connected to spirit. Like for me, for an example, I identify as a witch, so sometimes I'll get crystals. Sometimes crystals will help me feel more connected, or they'll help me, raise my vibration or feel like I'm at least in that state. And I feel like it's the same with candles or with incense or essential oils, your oracle cards, whatever works for you to really put you in that state of mind to where you remember who you are, and you remember that you are just as powerful and just as magical as anything else in the universe, so that you can set those intentions and bring magic into your life.
Yeah. And I think that even if you have the intention that that's not required, sometimes that is still just, I don't know, setting the tone, which
Mhm.
I use my cards. I have crystals and candles all over here, so
Mhm.
it's, I don't know, something about that, just doing the whole, what's the word I'm looking for? Just, going through the process of the
Yeah.
ritual. The ritual, I guess, is
Mhm.
the right word that I'm looking for.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it is, because I mean, even if you look at like an athlete, a lot of them have rituals that they do before games or before, big days. And obviously they'll look a little bit different from probably mine and your rituals, but it still helps them get into that state. It helps them get into, whatever they need to be in so that they can perform the best way possible. And so I think that intention is so important, and you should try to be intentional in everything that you do. But it's okay if you want to make it more showy, if you need more things to kind of give you that boost for some of your bigger intentions or some of your bigger rituals.
Yeah. And it's funny that you would bring up the athletes, because they even have like superstitions about, you can't wash my jersey or my jock strap or whatever, like,
Mhm.
crazy stuff like that, that no, 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 you don't do that for the whole season.
Mhm. Your son's a musician, right? You should ask him what rituals he has.
Oh my goodness. He has so many, so many. It's crazy. Now I'm going to jump to boundaries, because that is something that, especially along a path like this, it is definitely not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of work involved in this. And especially if you have a tendency towards being more empathetic. You definitely need to have some firm boundaries in place and stuff like that. So they can be so difficult to not only set, but to maintain and enforce. Like we've been taught from such a young age that, like I said earlier, putting ourselves first was just plain selfishness. So, like, what are some other reasons why people might struggle with boundaries? Why is it so hard for us?
Well, this is a really good question, and it's hard to answer fully because there's so many things that
Yeah.
that make it hard for people depending on their situation. But what it boils down to is, what limiting belief do you have that is making you feel like you can't have that boundary? And it looks, like I said, it's going to look different for every person. Sometimes we have a hard time setting boundaries because we have the tendency to people please. And I know this is definitely something that I struggle with. This is something that my husband struggles with. We're both empaths. We both want to serve other people. We want to, do what's best for other people. But you have to remember that should never be, you should never want to do always for other people and never for yourself, because that's what's going to lead to burnout. That's what's going to lead to resentment. And when we fall into that people pleasing state, we normally will give and give and give and give and give until we don't have anything left. And can't you can't pour from an empty cup. So when you give back to yourself, when you're able to have boundaries and say no, and you're able to give back to yourself some, then you can give more to others because you're giving from that overflow.
Right.
So for me, that's definitely one that comes up for me a lot is, I don't want to disappoint other people. I don't want to upset them or hurt their feelings. So when that comes up for me, I often try to ask myself, why do I want to say yes? And why do I want to say no? If I want to say yes, and my reasons are, oh, because I don't want to disappoint them, or, oh, because I don't want to hurt their feelings, or I want, they did something for me last week, so I have to do something for them this week, obligation. If I'm saying yes for more of those reasons, then I have to ask myself, am I responsible for their feelings? Is it my fault if they get their feelings hurt? If I upset them? No, it's not my fault. They are in control of their feelings and I am in control of mine. As long as I am expressing myself, I don't say anything that is rude or harmful or hurtful to them. That's all I can do. And then I'll ask myself, well, why am I wanting to say no? Is it because I truly don't have the time? I don't have the patience. I just don't want to, because that's an answer, right? Like no
Sure.
is a full sentence. We can say no. We don't need a reason. Then I try to really tap into that and uncover the limiting beliefs that are making me feel like I have to say yes. And at that point, you just kind of have to bring it in and then make a decision. And sometimes you'll choose them, and sometimes you'll choose you, but it really just comes down to awareness and trying to really uncover what is driving that wanting to say yes when you probably shouldn't.
Yeah. It's funny that you would use the empty cup thing. I can't tell you how many times I say that. Like, for a lot of people that know me, it's like I'm like a broken record with that. You cannot pour from an empty cup because you really can't. You just can't.
Mhm.
So now being an empath can really suck. It can really suck, especially if you don't have the tools in place to like ground and protect your own energy. How can I be an empowered empath?
That's a great question. And I love this question because I was 30 years old maybe when I found out that I was an empath. So I'd spent my whole life just absorbing everyone's feelings and not knowing that I could do anything about it, not even realizing what I was doing. And a lot of people think that, well, I'm an empath, so I just feel like crap all the time. I just got to absorb everyone else's feelings and feel however they feel. I was myself, I felt that that was true. But there's this teacher, her name is Christina Lopes. She is on YouTube, and she has a wonderful series for empaths if anyone is interested. And what I learned from her is we as empaths always are in control of what we absorb and what we interact with. It's just like any other energy. It's just like psychic energy. It's just like mediumship. If you want to connect, you can. If you don't want to connect, you don't have to. So the key is just to, when you walk into a room, if you start absorbing other people's feelings or emotions and you don't want to, say you can tell that the vibe's off, you can tell they're in a bad mood, you can tell that they're grumpy or sad or whatever, then what I like to do is I like to envision, and you probably are familiar with this since you are a medium. I picture my energy, so this can look different for everybody. I picture mine to be like a white light kind of floating all around me. I picture it coming in. I picture my energy coming back into my center. It usually comes back into my chest, and it's no longer allowed to interact with what's outside of me. I'll usually take some deep breaths so that I can recenter and ground, and it's as easy as that. Another thing that I like to do, especially if you're a little more confident with energy or a little bit more confident with visualization, is imagining your energy turning into fire, maybe like purple flame or just a regular fire, and it's going to transmute any of the negative energy that you're interacting with. So then you're taking their energy that they're putting off and you're changing it into love and light, or whatever energy that you're wanting to change that to. And it's really just that simple. I know that may sound crazy, but if you're an empath and you're struggling with this, just try it, because it's just knowing that you are what is magic. You being the empath is what is strong and what is powerful, and you can absorb what you want to absorb, and you can let go with what you want to let go of.
I love the idea of the transmutation in the fire. That's a really good one. My thing is, I literally just put myself inside of like a disco ball. If you can imagine that, I'm in a disco ball. So the whole thing is like mirrored. So anything that is like, I will allow love to come through, but anything that's other than that, it literally reflects right back to them. And it kind of like a return to sender sort of thing. No matter how crazy it sounds, whatever you do like that, it's going to be effective, because you have to believe that it's going to be effective. But I have never had an issue. And I've gone and done private parties where I read 15 people, and I never took on anybody's anything, and they didn't take anything from me.
Yeah.
Your intention is everything. The transmutation piece is really good, because you're right. There are a lot of people who think I'm sensitive, so I can't this or I can't that. And it's just bullshit. And if you ask me, it's kind of a cop out. Well, I don't want to deal with this, and so I'm not going to, because I'm sensitive. Okay.
Yeah, you have the power. You just have to believe in yourself and set the intention. And like we just talked about, your intention is everything. And if you have the intention to transmute this energy or to reflect this energy, and you believe in yourself and you believe that you're capable of doing it, then it will happen.
Yep.
Only other thing I would say you may struggle with is noticing when you are picking up someone else's energy and differentiating that from your own. That kind of comes with practice and getting more familiar with your own energy. And even then, I still struggle with certain people just because I'm around them all the time. That sometimes, like my daughter, for example, my oldest daughter, me and her are just very, very similar and are really close. So sometimes when she's in a bad mood, I'll be in a bad mood and I'm like, why am I so grumpy? And then it'll like a little light bulb will go off and I'm like, I'm not in the bad mood. She's in the bad mood. And then I'll put the shields up and I'll rework and reground and then I'll be good. But other than that, just becoming aware sometimes, especially if it's somebody that you're close to, or if you're not really expecting it, it may catch you by surprise and you may not realize it at first. But other than that, the power is in your hands.
Yep, absolutely. Now, this next question I ask everybody. So, based on your experiences and your current areas of expertise, what one thing would you recommend to someone to help them wake the fuck up? And by wake the fuck up, I mean quite literally to become aware of their interconnectedness, their connection to themselves, their connection to each other, and their connection to the planet and like everything. What one thing would you tell them to help them wake up to that knowledge?
That is a tough question. There's so many things that I love. So many things that I love. I would say if you want to wake the fuck up and something that would work for everybody, no matter what path they're on, is start becoming aware of what you're thinking. Become aware of your thoughts. Become aware of the way that you talk to yourself, the way that you talk to others, the way that you judge others in your head. Become aware of all of that mess that normally just goes through. We usually think hundreds of thousands of things within 5 minutes, and we can't recall any of them. So if you start paying attention to what comes through your head, but not judging it, just paying attention to what comes through, it will start to open you up to that deep level of healing that will open you up to love, and that will open you up to connection to all things.
Nice. Great answer. That's a great answer. I love it. And Maggie, this has been such a wonderful experience. I will have this information up in the show notes, but for anybody who'd like to find out more about like what you're doing, the podcast, anything like that, how would they go about getting in touch with you?
Yeah, so I have a website. It's chasingspirituality.com. You can find out more about me there. There's information about the podcast, information about my intention line, and I also recently started a blog, and that's there as well. And I'm on all the social media platforms as well. If anyone would like to follow me on those, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok.
Nice. And just real quick, because we didn't actually go over anything about your line. What is that?
Yeah, so my intention line as of right now, it's intention oils, bath bombs, bath salts, and I also have body butters and body scrubs. And what I do is I create my own blend using herbs, flowers, essential oils, and crystals. And I infuse those with my own energy while I set intention. With like self-love, I will set the intention of self-love. I want this to be full of love and acceptance and compassion. And then I will use corresponding herbs and flowers like vanilla and rose. I will add rose quartz to the oils. They're not in the salts or in the bath bombs. And I'll play Hertz frequencies that resonate with love, like the 528 frequency. And I'll just say affirmations and mantras over it as I create it, so that when you use these products, you can set your own intention and it will be like a double huge manifestation for you, and you'll bring all of those good vibes into your life.
I love that. I love that. The idea of that. I've done similar things myself, but just, I don't sell any of that or whatever, but just for friends. And the fact that they can feel it when they actually receive it is like, oh my God, it's so amazing. It's so amazing. They can feel every ounce of love that I put into the creation of it.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
I do too. And honestly, I probably give away more than I sell, but I gave a few ladies that I work with bought some from me, and she gave one to her daughter for Christmas. And they didn't know that, I'll identify as a witch or anything. And her daughter said, "This is a witch that made this." And she asked me the next day at work, she said, "Are you a witch?" And I just kind of looked at her and I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "My daughter said you were."
Wow. Do you think that you actually came to that Wiccan as part of your healing?
Yes, I definitely was drawn to that first. For me, I had a lot of religious trauma as well. So I was very resistant to God and to the angels and that aspect of it. So I was drawn to more of the energetic witchcraft part of it first, but then as I started looking more into witchcraft, I just kept getting stuff that didn't really resonate with me. Stuff that wasn't on the spiritual side. It was just more of the witchcraft side, or it was more related to Wiccan, which is different from my personal practice. So I then started looking into spirituality and into healing, and then I just connected them and created my own practice and my own beliefs.
Yeah. And honestly, that's the perfect way to do it, I think, because I don't resonate with all of that either. I certainly didn't resonate with the Presbyterian religion I was raised with or any of that. But I mean, I like to do my spells they're all rhymey and fun. And, I don't know. I just play around with it. So
I feel like witchcraft is just also a tool, like we were talking about earlier. It's just a tool for us to feel that connection to spirit. And for me, that's what it is anyways. No matter how it looks to someone else, it's me connecting.
yeah, I agree. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, just this was so much fun, and thank you for having me on your show.
Oh yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you for joining me. Thanks to everyone who tuned in today. As always, I'm grateful for your presence, and I'll see you all back here next Sunday with another episode as we continue to wake the fuck up.